This is Sportish.
Do it better.
This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish.
This is Sportish. It's the show about sports that we started during the global sports shutdown. My name is Geoff Brault. My co-host is Dr. Keith Strudler, the director of the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State University. Our producer is Mike Wallace. You're hanging out with us on For the Fans, the fastest growing sports network in the world. Thanks for joining us, whether you're over the top or you're streaming us. Maybe you're at ftfnext.com, or if you're not watching our beautiful new video setup, and I call it new because mine's new, Keith is the same. You could just be listening to our beautiful voices via Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, whatever. Let's talk about the new video setup, because this has been, if you're a loyal follower of this program, this has been the bane of one of our existence. So I am happily unmarried, and I feel like now, Keith, I know what it's like to be married.
Yep.
Because I own this beautiful new webcam. Hello, everybody watching me in 4K. Solely because I wanted you to stop nagging me about it. I assume
fair,
that's you.
The 4K never leaves our house. The 4K gets put down to 1080, so it's aged down. So you and I are enjoying each other in 4K. Everyone else, unfortunately, has to deal with the 1080. But now I'll tell you what. This is what I've said. I mean, look. In the end of the day, I got what I wanted. I wanted you to buy the webcam. And I was going to nag you until you got that webcam, right? It's kind of my creed in life. You can make me stand in the corner, but you can't make me shut up. And so I was going to bother you until eventually you thought to yourself, is it better for me to have those $70 in my pocket, which is what you paid for a potentially hot webcam? Is it better? Is it better for
but was your serial number scratched off, or was that just me?
Or was it better for you to surrender the $70, let it go to its rightful home to get me off your back? And I think you're probably feeling a lot lighter today. You're going to be happy with this decision.
I mean, you know what I feel like? I feel like an underdog fighter who went the distance. Like, I feel like Rocky in Rocky 1. I put up a great fight. I resisted the champ for as long as I could. But look, in the end, you won on points. Like, you wore me down, and I did succumb. Like, I did not get the victory, but I fought harder than most people thought I would.
Can we start talking about that bookcase now?
Oh.
By the way, for those of you that have been following at home, the Papa Shot has been built. It's up in the house. I lost it. I cut myself a lot. It was very difficult. I actually do have a small hole in the ceiling. Actually, surprisingly, not where I thought it was going to be. So I have a different hole, but it's up. We're playing. It's bringing the family together. And if you don't, it's one of the greatest things I've ever purchased.
You sent me a picture of the Papa Shot. It seems like your ceiling is too low. Can you actually shoot?
Yeah, well, you got it. You need to use more of a line drive situation. You learn quickly how this works. Although it does count if it goes off the ceiling. The problem is a basement ceiling, that thing goes up to 90 inches. That's a tall ceiling for a basement. Basement ceilings are a little bit lower. They're not that high. So I have to have it on the second highest setting, on I believe the 84-inch setting. It can be challenging. We have unfortunately taken down the smoke detector already. So there's going to be some damage. There's going to be some damage, but it is well worth it. I am very excited. And as you pointed out, that complements very nicely the dome hockey, which is, as we all know, perhaps the most underrated arcade game going.
So, you know what? I was thinking about that because in the background of your picture, your little humble braggy picture of your Papa Shot, you can see the rest of the stuff in your rec room. And there is a dome hockey table. There was a foosball table. There was a pinball machine. What else? Is that
hockey.
it?
Of course, an air hockey. Air hockey.
Both dome and air hockey.
You have a dome hockey. We have an air hockey. Of course, not pictured as the pool table. And that's in the parlor, of course.
I mean, obviously. I just assumed everyone knew that.
Actually, next to the wine cellar. And we know this to be true. There is a wine cellar. So that's where I'm going to get locked in. That's where when I disappear for a month, someone will lock me in that place. That's how I die.
I'd just like to tell any law enforcement people that may or may not be listening to this either live or in retrospect, it wasn't me. I was thinking about that because I had said to you that the dome hockey table is the most underrated piece of game room equipment. And then I started thinking about it. And honestly, it might be the pinball machine because that is an awfully rare thing to see in someone's house. Someone's really committed to the leisure lifestyle when they've got a pinball machine in their house.
Yeah. Well, now the pinball machine came with the house. So
really?
They didn't want to take them. Interestingly, a retired couple that's moving to a townhouse decided that they may not need to take the pinball machine with them. It might not fit into their future plans.
What kind of pinball machine is it?
I don't know. It's called a jackpot.
Oh, okay. So it's not so it's like an Addams Family or like it doesn't have any sort of.
It's got like what looks like aliens, on the top of it. It's got, it's your standard pinball situation. No, it's not a branded one.
So when you, as ostensibly a grown-up professional person, first walked through the house that you currently live in and saw that there was a pinball machine in it.
Yeah, that was it. Sold.
That's done. That's the reason you bought the house, right?
Done.
What would you have overlooked for the pinball machine?
I mean, I think the line we said was asbestos. I mean, that was pretty much it. No, it was. I mean, and I will be on we had to redo there was a lot of color issues. Like there was it was a deep red and green wallpaper, and literally Andre and I walked down. And so it was, they'd lived in this for a while. So they had done the basement at a different time period when that was kind of more in the style. So it was this heavy green kind of stuff. Everything was painted like wood paneling. I mean, it was very much from a time period. And Andre walked down and she's like, oh God, and literally all you heard me say cool, pinball.
Why do you think HGTV hasn't given us a show yet? Because I mean,
I don't know.
I'm enjoying this more than any discussion we've ever had. I could do the entire 48 minutes on your basement.
Well, you know how much I love House Hunters International, all the home repair shows. I mean, I live for that, and I even watch Open House New York City on Sunday mornings after I watch me some Willie Geist. So I like all of them. There's something very voyeuristic about being able to kind of experience that. Of course, we all know the biggest problem is they have budgets of they'll be like, how much do you have for this rebuild? I have $12,000. They're like, it's going to be tough to do the kitchen, the bathroom, 4 bedrooms. I mean, and then they somehow manage to do it, right? Of course, I as you know, I think they fall apart the minute they leave. But so that's the problem is you watch those and you think you can do that because we're having conversations about possibly a bathroom situation, which I don't want to go down that road. I don't want to go down that road.
Do you remember the show Extreme Makeover Home Edition? Ty Pennington, move that bus. I really very much would like to see a Where Are They Now with the Extreme Makeover Home Edition because none of those houses are built to be lived in. I mean, you take a kid, say you got an 8-year-old kid when the show comes. He's like, what's your favorite thing in the world? I like Batman. And they build him a Batman themed room. And I don't mean they hang a Batman poster on the wall or just paint something you need to paint over. He's sleeping in a hammock suspended from the ceiling. And that kid in 10 months is going to hate that room so much. What happens 5, 10?
Batman actually comes into your house. He comes into your house every It's a contract. Well, let me tell you so here's an interesting question. What do you think of people that have gone on these shows? What do you think the divorce rate is?
That's a great question. That's especially a great question because, and not to get all morbid on everybody, but if you're on one of those shows, it's because you've gone through some sort of heartache or strife, or you've had a great challenge in your life. So already you're under a tremendous amount of stress.
Sure. Well, you brought that conversation down. That was not the...
Well, I'm just saying, it would be difficult for a regular relationship to survive all of the stress. Now you're throwing a national television audience in front, and I just think, imagine if you were on Extreme Makeover Home Edition, and then you suddenly felt like you were Tom Hanks because you were on ABC for 1 hour, one time. You would be impossible to deal with. So I think honestly, I bet a lot of those couples and families are no longer together.
Do you think? This is kind of like on the Food Network. Once they've been on one cooking show, all of a sudden they become kind of celebrity chefs. That's the gateway. I see people and I'm like, how did they become and they're like, well, they started on Chopped and then they worked their way up.
That's such a good point. Like, is
And
there
so-
anything?
And then so
But-
they're like, it's like fame just begets fame. It's not like they were famous chefs. You become a famous chef by going on Chopped, and then you kind of work your way into the circuit, and now you're part of the establishment. It's not like they found you like as a chef, and then like it's a whole thing now. It's a whole new thing. So do you think if I was on a home repair show, I'd be like, now I need, like almost like it used to be with Road Rules with MTV. You went on Road Rules, then you went on to the next, and then you just became part of the MTV family. I'd probably just be in a nonstop, like calling the next group to get them into the house to do renovations, because that would be my thing.
So you think that if you were on one of those shows that you would be so beloved that the show would make you part of the show? They'd be like, we need more Keith. Do you think that the makeover show couldn't go on if you weren't a part of every episode?
I will say, I think I would add such a high level of dysfunction to the process. I think that might be because, some of these things are crazy. Like the people have requests. They're like, I told you I wanted 10 Dan Marino paper mache heads on the wall. I told you that.
Right.
So I think I would be one of those people that would have such bizarre kind of requests. I told you I wanted a urinal in every bathroom, as you know, because that's what I envision that you and Vern Lundquist kind of hover around as you're having.
Sure. That's, by the way, go check out old episodes of this
You're
program on
welcome.
ftfnext.com, and you can hear about the time that I once peed next to Vern Lundquist. And that's apparently something that Keith wants to recreate in his newly remodeled house. So we'll see if that happens. Here's the rundown of our program.
Hey, Vern, welcome to my house. We just have one fantasy we'd like to fulfill before we get to the meal?
Well, it's not a fantasy for me. I've already done it. I've lived the dream.
So if we were all over here, and then we can get to the show. But if you and Vern and I somehow,
you sure we can get to the show after this? You're okay with that?
You and Vern and I, how awkward this conversation be? Vern comes over. Somehow Vern is the Sportish is blowing up. Vern Lundquist wants to come. He's now running some kind of production company. He wants to come over to the house. He wants to kind of check us out, make sure we're up to stuff. And we're sitting there and we're eating and things are going well. And it looks like we're going to seal the deal, and he's going to help front the show. And I say, Vern, there's a thing here. I was like, look, there's kind of a fairness issue. Like my partner here, he already had an opportunity to pee next to you. So this show, so we don't have a thing between Jeff and I as the show kind of blows up and you're here. Do you think that we could just straighten this out and you and I go stage left, we go pee one out quickly and we come back here, even Stevens, and then we get on with our lives, we get on with the show. Do you think that would kill the deal?
Pee one out?
I don't know if that's ever been said before. I don't know if that's an expression that exists or if I have just literally coined a new phrase.
I don't have a segue for this. So the
Super Bowl week. It's Super Bowl week. Things are nutty. It's Super Bowl week.
I mean, it's not. Next week is Super Bowl week.
Oh, is that true? We get the extra week? I'm sorry. I jumped the gun on that one.
It's not. Okay. Woo. So
Has any show ever talked about Vern Lundquist urinating more than this show? Vern Lundquist urologist would be jealous of us. It's like, guys, you got to give it a rest.
Oh gosh. Okay. So the Olympics might be canceled. They've already been postponed a year. The Summer Olympic Games in Tokyo, and well, they might end up being canceled. Depending on who you talk to in Japan, they're either already off or certainly forging ahead. These are the two stories that are coming out of games organizers, government officials in Japan. There's polling done in the nation of Japan that has shown that 80% of people support the Olympics being canceled. And that is because of the coronavirus. Cases have been spiking in Japan. The Japanese just recently
spiking being a relative term. I mean, they got a long way to go to become American.
So that's what I was getting at. Spiking recently, Japan just crossed the 5,000 death threshold. To give you an idea, 4 times in the last month, 4,000 people a day have died in America in a single day.
Yeah.
And the Japanese people do not want to invite athletes and travelers and folks from all over the world into their island nation to have the Olympic Games. The Olympic organizers, Keith, have basically said there is no plan B. We are going to have the Olympics in July.
Literally said. The head of the president of the IOC said, no plan B. This is it.
Right.
And I think there's no plan B for the Olympic movement. Like, we are doing this thing right now.
And they want the Olympics to be this sort of world rebirth into the old world after coronavirus. They want to be a celebration of the end of coronavirus. This one seems... The reason I think the Olympics probably will be canceled is because so many people are guaranteeing that they won't. And when you keep getting asked that question, are you going to cancel? Are you going to cancel? Are you going to cancel? It's a lot like when general managers get asked if they're going to fire their head coach. It's always the stronger the denial, the more likely it's going to happen. You paid far more attention to the Olympics than I. Do you think that we will have an Olympiad this summer?
So you very well articulated kind of the ambiguity and the dividing lines where, depending on which politician you speak with, you will get a very different perspective on this. And clearly the Japanese public, they do not want this. They have no interest at this point. And they also realize that even if the Olympics were to come to Tokyo, it would be such a different experience that some of the benefit of having the Olympics is you kind of get to celebrate in the moment. It puts your city on center stage. It has the ability potentially to bring some revenue to your town. All of those things are going away. So basically what you'll have is a bunch of people coming to your town, living in some kind of constructed bubble over a bunch of, a village and so forth. And you kind of sit at home and watch it on television like the rest of us. And probably because of the inability to generate revenue off of this, both because sponsors might be reticent to stay on board and because you can't sell a single ticket, you're going to lose even more money. Now, the catch-22 for Tokyo is if they don't sell TV rights, they're going to lose everything. And TV rights for this Olympics are going to be a particularly high percentage. And so, and in Japan, I would expect travel to the games, even in the best of times, would be lower than it might be if the games were in the United States or in a European mainland, because it's difficult to get to Japan. So inherently, you are reliant on the Japanese people to make this thing work, and they don't want it. Now, I would guess before any of this happened, you were probably at best of 50-50 on whether they wanted it anyway. So in some cases, that 80% number is a bit confusing. You did still, though, take a pretty far turn to Noseville. Not that, because of all of this. My take is, and I don't know, honestly, what the popular vernacular is on this. I think they're going to have the games. Just like I think, just like we thought the NFL was going to play, just like we thought college basketball is going to have an NCAA tournament, there is so much resting on the ability to put these games on, right? There is, in many cases, in some cases, this could be the viability of the games themselves because the billions, this could be for Tokyo and for Japan, this could be, if they don't do this, the kind of financial hole that even Montreal would laugh at. Like, they'd be like, oh, look at you guys. Like, we're not the worst now, right? And I think for the network partners, it could be, and you talk, NBC Sports, which is obviously our American partner on the Olympic Games, which has going through a reorganization as we speak, because, For the Fans has now risen up another notch on the network, on the sports network, right, as NBC Sports goes away. Now they are repurposing that to Peacock. This is part of a larger strategy to increase people getting on their app. So it's not really this that NBC Sports isn't doing well. They were actually making money, but they saw a future that wasn't going to work. I think that the downside and the risk of them not holding a games is so pronounced that people in positions of power will do anything they can to make this happen. Now, I don't think it's not going to look like what the games normally look like, but if they're playing, look, we made it through a whole NFL season, and that was a nightmare. I think they'll have half the number of athletes we normally had. I think we'll go from 11,000 to 5,000, maybe. I think it'll be a very different experience, but I think the games will go on.
I don't know. Aren't you looking at that through an American prism, though? Like, as much as all of our people were like, you must play football, I don't get the impression that the Japanese people are like, we must have the Olympics. I feel like the pressure on the politicians in Japan comes from the other side of it. $12 billion, by the way, is the price tag. That's what Japan has invested into these Olympics.
It's a lot to not have the Olympics.
And it's also not like they can just get the next one. The earliest they could have the Olympics is in 12 years, I believe, 2032. Yeah. It would
let's be clear. Let's be clear. And if Japan does not host the Olympics, they're probably not going to be high up on the list. I think this might be the end of the run. We may not live to. I think the pressure is going to be very hard from the IOC. I think the only way this doesn't happen is if literally the Japanese leader, Japanese president says, "You're not coming." I think he literally would have to, and I think the pressure against that would be, and I understand, look, he's a new president. I mean, this is a new president that is probably going to be out of a job anyway, because either decision is going to be highly unpopular. So I just can't imagine. I can't imagine them canceling. I really can't.
Really?
I can't.
Really? 80% of the Japanese people do not want the Olympics in Japan. And you think the government is going to say, well, we got to do it. These 45 people in Switzerland say it has to happen.
I don't think it's just the 45 people in Switzerland. I think it's going to be all of their international partners. I think it's going to be calls from the American president. I think it'll be the weight of the world. So my guess is a lot of the economic partners that also rely on this happening, that don't have to have the misfortune of having it in their stadiums and in their city, they are going to push so hard to make this possible that this will be an act of kind of diplomacy far more than it's going to be an act of a Japanese president deciding what his citizens want. I think in some cases, the heat of politics, from the outside will be too pronounced. And I actually think that the potential financial loss of not hosting this could be more dire. And so the other thing that's going to be interesting is what kind of campaign will the Japanese government and the IOC push? There's going to be a propaganda campaign. So this is, in many ways, they're not just battling the virus, because that's going to be one way or another. They're battling an information campaign, which is how can we assure people that not hosting this will, sink our nation? B, how can we make it clear that hosting this is a patriotic act that will not endanger? How do we show that we are going to be able to safely host this? That's the real battle now.
Does this bring us closer to what I've felt is the future of the Olympics, and that
the steroid Olympics? The ones.
Well, fingers crossed. But saving truly getting to see the limits of human performance. The home site Olympics. The Olympics are always contested in the same place all the time.
Wouldn't you think that this would there would I mean, look, right now we already have a couple of cities. We have Paris and the United States already lined up for Winter Games, and China obviously has the next, winter, and they're going to say yes, bring it on down. Like, China is going to host the Olympics, whether they have to create an entirely new island to do it, because they feel this is in their best interest. We have Paris and we have the United States. Look, one of the sites, the next site is Los Angeles. It would be hard to consider a better spot to host the Olympics every other time than Los Angeles. It is in Hollywood. I mean, right?
Have you driven in Los Angeles?
I have
on a
driven.
Tuesday, and you think bringing the games of the Olympiad to Southern California is an ideal situation?
Because it's network headquarters. How could you? It seems to me It seems to me if you're creating a mediated property, I'm not saying you have to put it in like downtown LA. Imagine this. Imagine you construct essentially kind of an Olympic village on the outskirts of Los Angeles. You build an entire, I mean, that's basically what you're talking about, is building a place that you could use, build a resort that becomes the home of the Olympics every 4 years. I think the United States absolutely, unless you think it's going to be Orlando, but then everyone would die from heat exhaustion. I think LA, where else are you going to put it? Where, if you are going to have this is where they're going to do it every time. Where are you going to do it?
Greece.
Oh, that'll run well.
I'm going to do it in Greece. It's ancestral home. It's going to be like, honestly, it's going to be like the Vatican. It's going to be its own sort of little separate property.
Have you waited online?
It's going to be IOCville.
Have you waited online?
No, we've been over this. I've never been to Europe.
No, it's not going to be in Greece. It's going to be in a country that has an enormous economic influence and has the U.S. is still where the money comes from for the Olympic Games. We still supply the vast majority of revenue for the games between our television contract and the fact that most of the companies that are sponsoring the games are American based. So if it's going anywhere on a regular rotation, it's coming to the U.S. And what you envisioning it going to like someplace in the middle of nowhere and they just build a whole new city?
Hear me out. Although that would be interesting. I kind of would like that if it was like a dystopian, like Olympic Truman Show. I think it'd be even better if athletes had to stay in the Olympic Truman Show until they were done competing. So if you wanted to be Michael Phelps and you would have like a 5 Olympic run, that's 25 years of your life in the dome. And we get to watch all of it. It's all broadcast on television. Now there's an idea. International Olympic Committee.
Hey, you've been on the treadmill for a while. Do you think I could get on now?
I just want to watch like Ryan Lochte eat his breakfast. Eat his 7,000 calorie breakfast before he goes and trains.
It's like Moonbase 8, which was it wasn't my favorite. The show I like Space Force.
Okay, haven't seen it.
Right. It's great.
You
should.
know?
And by the way, as long as I'm giving recommendations, I'll tell you what, I've been listening to a new podcast. It's the one about
don't tell people to listen to a different podcast.
Well, no, after you listen to ours, you can binge this one though, right? And when you're waiting it's the one about the Scorpions. The Wind of Change. It's by Crooked Media. Well,
don't talk about other podcast networks.
Spoiler alert, there is a theory that the Scorpions were fronted by the FBI. The FBI or the CIA, excuse me, the CIA, the Scorpions were working with the CIA to end communism. How about that? That's a hot take. That's way hotter than the games will go on. That's a much hotter take. Because it's not my take. It's from another podcast. But finish listening to this one first. I continue. Games are going to happen.
I'll give you my hot take. I do think there are American cities that could be your permanent host of the Olympics. I would not put them in Los Angeles, the second most densely populated city in America. Hear me out here. Las Vegas.
Oh, it's too hot. It's too hot.
Do them in the winter.
You can't do them in the winter. It's called
of course
the Summer
you can.
Games. First of all, it gets cold in the winter. Do you not?
The Summer Games are in the winter for the whole southern half of the planet.
They don't count, and everyone knows that. Once you've committed to the southern hemisphere, you have committed to not being part of the civilized world. With all due respect to everyone that does live, they're lovely places. I mean, South America, Australia, New Zealand, they're fabulous. But you don't get to run. It's kind of like when you're on the West Coast. You can't complain that the shows are on at 9 a.m. That's just the way it is.
It's 2021. We're about to have a World Cup in Qatar. Like, we have the technology to beat the heat. I don't want to hear this argument that it's too hot in the desert. Plus, as the cabbie told me on the Las Vegas Strip, as I was really stuck to the back seat of his cab, it's a dry heat.
No, it's not. It is a dry heat, but it doesn't matter. 120 degrees. I think the hottest place in the world is on an airplane tarmac in Las Vegas. If you've ever gotten off a plane and walked on that tarmac, it is brutal. No, Vegas is an interesting choice, especially now they've built stadiums. It's an interesting choice. Not going to happen. They do have the hotels, like they have a lot of the infrastructure built out. Still not going to happen.
And I tell you what, you want to reinvigorate interest in the Olympics? Gambling.
That's true. Can you not gamble on the Olympics?
I think you can. Okay. I mean, I think you can, but gambling, the last time there was a Summer Olympiad, sports betting wasn't legal in America. I
can't imagine there'd be any chance for corruption with people coming from all over the world from dictatorships.
But hear me out. Does that not make it 20 times more interesting? Where not only am I going to bet on the outcome, and now I get all the intrigue of where
someone knows if they come home to their home country and they didn't know what they were told, they will disappear.
Is that not way more interesting than just watching 10 guys run in a circle?
I've been trying to follow the news of what's been happening in Russia with, I forget the name of the political leader who's,
Alexander Navalny?
Seems to be getting poisoned with regularity. And by the way, I made this, and this is, I'm not making light of that situation.
This will be good.
hot sports takes and hot not sports take. Well, I'm afraid almost to say this, but I think we've all been thinking that. Are you not surprised that the Russian government is not better at poisoning people?
Maybe they are better at poisoning people.
But I'm just surprised that people live through this. This seems to be.
Maybe they wanted him to live through it. Conspiracy theory.
It's just, I'm surprised. Like, I feel like that's why I feel like having athletes come to Vegas, and when the last thing your dictator says to you as you're about to board the plane, to be like, I expect you to finish out of the medals. Like, you're, then you really have to think about that. So I don't know. All right, what else are we talking about? That's our hot Olympic take.
Yeah, I want to make a natural segue into online chess. Something that surprised me quite a bit is that esports and the amount of money that people could win by esports actually down significantly this year during the lockdown year. You would think when all people could do would play video games, that those prizes and interest in esports would be skyrocketing. Doesn't seem to be the case. Data just announced the highest earning esports athlete is actually the world's number one chess player, Magnus Carlsen. He made over $500,000 last year playing chess online. That surprised me.
How much did he make?
$500,000, $500,000.
And that's just from his earnings, not of course, the lucrative chess sponsorship deals that he's getting.
That's just what he's made playing online chess, playing in online chess tournaments and things like that.
So, and chess, of course, one of the original kind of electronic games that you can play, right? Long before some of these video games.
It might be the original. You can remember back when people had like dial-up AOL internet or whatever, you could play chess.
So, and you probably don't know this. I love chess. I play with Elliot all the time. Do you know how to play chess?
I do. I was in a chess club when I was younger. I was. I went to middle school.
Is this after you got kicked off the baseball team?
Yes, I decided to go to my real passion, chess. In middle school, there was a student that a classmate who was a master, not yet a grandmaster. He might have actually gotten to grandmaster later, but he was a master in middle school. He was like a very, very, very good chess player.
A master in middle school?
In middle school, yeah.
You know what?
Very good.
When things like that happen, I always feel even less good about myself than I already do. When I see people accomplishing things when they're like 13 or 14 that I couldn't accomplish at 60, like it bothers me. It really bothers me. So I don't even feel happy for them.
You want to know what was even worse? He was exceptionally normal. Like, he was a very, very normal person. And he was also very nice and well-liked. And when you would play chess with him, he was so confident and so good. He would literally explain to you why what you did was bad, or tell you why you're losing, and then beat you anyway.
I'll tell you what, this kind of affirms our theory that there really are aliens among us. I mean, as we've talked about multiple times on this show, we're fairly certain that aliens have been watching us. They're visiting. Maybe they're already here. Maybe he's one of, right? Because you got to believe if aliens can get all the way from wherever they're coming from, they can create a new skin. Like, they can look like us. I mean, I don't want to get too into the weeds on this, but we have to believe that someone probably even works for the fans is an alien. I mean, we just have to figure it's kind of like you figure someone in the supermarket has coronavirus. There's probably at least 1 or 2 aliens as well.
I tell you, you just made yourself the prime suspect. But do you really think that if aliens were going to come to Earth, the vehicle they would choose to sort of assert their dominance and to integrate themselves into our society is chess?
It's an international game of competition and peace. Why not? Bobby Fischer had quite a bit of influence before he went crazy. So why not? You can do a lot. Look, where's the one place where you want to take down the Russians? Where are you going to take them down? Chess.
Hockey.
Chess. Even hockey. Hockey's another thing. Yeah. There is hockey, but there's even the scene in Rocky 4 where they're playing chess. Like, chess it's a big part. It's a big thing. It's a big international game.
I've seen the Queen's Gambit.
Yeah.
It was great. It was great.
I'm surprised at 2 things. One, I'm surprised that you can make that much money playing online chess.
Same. And I'm
didn't
also
know.
surprised, like, that you can just be the number one chess player on the planet and
Just jump on a game.
Just hop in. Yeah.
This is like being LeBron James and going to like the YMCA and be like, I got next. Like, what? Let's play for. I mean, it does seem. I'm a little surprised, but that just shows in some ways kind of how esports has disrupted a space, and particularly for something like chess, where you really can play pretty much anywhere. I'm surprised at that. Secondly, I am surprised, like you, that esports took such a precipitous nosedive. And we discussed this a little bit before we got on the air, because we sometimes occasionally talk before we get on the air. Although it's usually text, in case anyone wants to really get into the weeds there. I think I like talking on the phone more than you do. I don't think you like talking on the phone.
I don't know what my contract stipulates that I only have to actually speak to you for 1 hour a week. I made sure to have that written in there.
No appearances. We'll do the appearances. We will not talk.
Exactly. Right. I can talk near you, but I don't have to talk to you.
So I think one of the things that we're postulating and suggesting is perhaps esports, which everyone just assumed was going to be on a meteoric rise, right? Everyone's building these esports stadiums, and Twitch is making it such that the viewership rivals the Super Bowl every time they play. It is potential, or it is possible that the economics was a bit inflated. And all of a sudden, when people started to count their nickels a little bit, when the economy went a little soft, it was really easy to roll back on this. And there somehow seems to be a lack of confidence in this being smart money. Now, I don't know enough about the economics of these sponsorships to know whether or not that makes sense or not. You know, I don't know enough about the viewership habits either. And so I mean, a lot of this is conjecture, but you would assume that this would be one of the sports that the virus and the way that we're living now would kind of reinforce the narrative that this is where you want to kind of future spend on, because this is not going to go away. You can actually build stars through the virus, unlike what's happening in these other sports where it's very hard to kind of build new star currency because they're not able to do appearances. It's hard to do endorsements, all the things that, you know, you're really only relying on social at this point. So I'm a little surprised at that, but I do think that it probably infers that there's a kind of a soft middle in this thing. And that while people do really like playing, it may not be the spectator fantasy that we all assume it to be.
We started this show in its podcast form prior to our wonderful relationship with For the Fans Network, ftfnext.com, to check out old archived episodes of Sportish. We started it when all the sports shut down, and we were wondering, are we ever going to be able to go to games again, be amongst a packed arena? Fans are slowly, or perhaps depending on the state you live in, not so slowly, starting to return to arenas. And the Miami Heat down in Florida, a state which seems to be kind of a free-for-all when it comes to how many people you can pack into a gymnasium or a stadium, the Miami Heat are getting ready to return fans to their games. And Keith, they are doing it by employing COVID-sniffing dogs. This is true. I did a lot of reading. Are you making
this up? This sounds like two truths and a lie.
My first instinct when I read this was probably the same thing you just thought. Dogs can sniff COVID? And the answer is exceptionally well. They can smell it in the sweat. It's like 90% effective.
So you're telling me a dog is better than the thing they shove all the way up to your eyeballs?
My question to you is, if trained dogs can smell COVID and it's 90% accurate, where the heck have all the dogs been?
Who knew? Well, the problem is that, the real problem is the dogs can't talk. So you knew they were smelling something, and but I mean, they don't know how to say COVID. They don't know how to say COVID.
No, you know what they do? When they detect it, they can do, depending on how they're trained, they either sit. So the dog either sits in front of you and just stares at you, makes you feel like a real jamoke, or they can dig with their paw. They could just start scraping at you, which is almost more insulting if you think about it.
Do you think they ever get confused? They're like, this guy, and meanwhile, it's just a guy who's smuggling like a kilo of cocaine in his... Like, is there ever a dog that had like a previous career as a drug?
Wouldn't it be? What if the dog could only detect?
Sorry, I've got packets of cocaine in my rectum right now.
To be fair, in Miami, you might have a better chance of getting into the arena with the cocaine than you would with the COVID.
We're allowed to say that on For the Fans, right? I feel like I mean,
What, that sometimes people do drugs in Miami? Is this breaking news? Has no one seen Miami Vice? Like,
oh, that's a good show. That's a great show. That's a great show. You know, my show right now, I'm all into this Formula One show.
okay.
It's on Netflix. I did not know how scary it is to drive those cars.
You didn't think driving 200 miles an hour, 6 inches off the ground in an open air rocket ship was scary?
It's worse than I thought. It is scary. They're not afraid of anything. They're not afraid of anything.
There's some great videos on YouTube of guys like Lewis Hamilton driving in a regular car, like, a car that can go, 140,
Jaguar,
150 miles an hour, but just driving celebrities or regular people around in the passenger seat of a regular car on a racetrack, and they freak out.
Well, it's the Formula One.
It's terror in people's eyes.
It's these turns. They're going through like these crazy city streets. It's nuts. Yeah. All right, let's go. So the dogs, I'm very surprised, but I do wonder if I'd be concerned if you're like, no, look, I just got drugs on me, or I'd be concerned that these dogs are able to identify the difference between COVID and some other thing they're smelling for. Maybe you have like a beef jerky in your pocket or something like that.
All right, last thing.
And that's how they're gonna keep people out of the arenas. They're gonna, so if the dog comes,
that's how they're going to do the COVID testing. And if you are afraid of dogs or allergic to dogs, you can still get into the arena, but you have to take a 45-minute, you have to take a rapid test.
What if you're a cat person? Like, the cats know stuff too. You know this. The cats know when people are going to die. They go to the hospital. Like, the last thing you want to see when you're in a hospital is a cat getting cozy to your front door.
I'm sorry. You go to a lot of hospitals with cats in them? What is the healthcare like where you live?
No, you know this. Don't you know this? Cats?
No.
There's a lot, like, cats, like they often are in like nursing homes and there because they help provide comfort.
Sure.
And they're,
animals comfort people. Sure.
But there's all these stories about cats when they start to hover around a door. It's like a time is near.
They're the harbinger of death.
You are. When a cat sits outside, you don't want to see that.
Last thing that we have to touch on before we go, there was a $1 billion lottery jackpot won in America last week. The winning ticket was pulled in Michigan, $1 billion. After taxes, your lump sum payment comes out to be something in the high sixes, 600 some odd million
in the sevens. No, it was in the sevens.
Did it get in the sevens?
Yeah, in the sevens.
Very good. I don't know enough about the tax law in Michigan.
It seemed low, but somehow it seemed like it was going to be in the sevens. And so it's all, now you take the lump sum. You always take the lump sum.
Of course you take the lump sum. You could die tomorrow. Why wouldn't you take that? I mean, it's foolish not to take the lump sum.
Especially once you get $1 billion, you want to talk about a clock being on your lifetime. That is, you're not making it that far.
Keith, how do you feel that someone is now richer than you and all they had to do was walk into their local gas station and buy a ticket? That can't sit well with you. That can't sit well with you.
But to be fair, I think we've all acknowledged that anything that I have, I didn't earn either. And so in some ways, I kind of walked into any sum.
That doesn't stop me from telling people you did.
I work hard. No question. You want me to walk you through what I did today?
No. Can't imagine something I want less.
That would be bad. So then at 10:30, I got on this next meeting, but this was a tough one. These forms didn't make any sense. You want to talk about bureaucracy. So look, I mean, I think we both have, well, I don't know that I don't want to win the lottery. I don't.
What? Why not? That's ridiculous.
No, I don't want it. If you said you got a choice of winning the $1 billion or not winning the $1 billion, I don't want it.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard, especially from someone who has often repeated into microphones and other recording devices. Do you know how much money is enough money? More money.
No, I'm just saying it. That's just, it's like a, just like a musician. You're just singing. Like I'm.
That is, I mean, you got to explain yourself. You're telling me that if someone said, Keith, you pick door number 1, there's $1 billion. Keith, you pick door number 2, there is $0. You're like, I'm going to take door number 2.
There's got to be a door. If this is Let's Make a Deal, there has to be door number 3, and it's like a camel, something like that. There's always that crazy thing. And I've always wondered, like, do you actually get the camel? Like, do you actually get the? So here's the thing. Look, you want to have enough money that you're comfortable, but once you get up to $1 billion, nothing means anything. Like, when you're up at $1 billion, what is the motivation to get out of bed in the morning? Like, what's the point? Well, what's the point?
to experience joy, to see a child laugh.
Oh, when's the last time you sat and watched a child
I don't know.
That's probably the last time you saw that was like probably Let's Who's Talking 2 or something like that. That's the last time you've watched a child laugh. So
all those things are still great just because you have a lot of money. You can still enjoy the simple pleasures in life.
There's no, and honestly, at that point, you can't even watch Let's Who's Talking 2. You'd be like, you know what? Just get John Travolta in here. Like, just fly him down. So, I mean, you can't. It's not. That was John Travolta, right? I think it was John Travolta, not Bruce Willis. I get my.
I'm pretty sure it was John Travolta. You also got the name of the movie. It's Look Who's Talking, not Let's Who's Talking, which just grammatically is a nightmare. And I wasn't going to say anything, but while we're on the topic of correcting Keith, the leader of Japan is a prime minister. It's not a president. I was going to let that go, but now I'm not. Now it's just like at the end of the episode, it's like a stat boy thing where we're just going to say everything that you've gotten wrong. Did you notice anything else Keith got wrong during the show? Tweet at us at SportishPod.
And I bet you that if anyone does this, it'll at the end of the first tweet, it'll be like 1 of 7. So no, but you can't
finish your thought about why you wouldn't want $1 billion.
So there's no point in getting up. You also never know then at what point, like, is any relationship authentic? Like, is anything authentic?
The ones you had before you were rich are.
Yeah, but then you're going to be tempted for the new ones. You're going to be like, oh, well, I could date Jennifer Aniston, and now that's in your head, and because that's
not authentic for you either.
My point is, like, the fact that you have limited resources keeps you like grounded in some form of reality. Once you dispense the value of anything, now this probably reveals kind of the how vapid I am, because I basically have just told you I believe that everything in some way, manner, or form has a price tag on it, and once I can no longer have that price tag to tell me what something's worth, I can't make sense of the universe. That I've just revealed the deepest secret of my soul, which is I look at a room and I see dollar signs. And when those dollar signs go away, I've lost my North Star.
Fortunately, I can help you with this. This is being recorded. If you would look directly into the camera and say, I, Keith Strudler, if I ever come into a large sum of money, I will give that sum of money to one Geoff Brault.
Well, I'm not going to say that because
listen, I don't want it, but I know how much you don't want it, and I feel like it's my duty to take it for you.
All right, here's what I'll say. I'll make you happy. If I win the lottery, I will give it all to charity.
That doesn't make me happy at all. As we talk about revealing things about ourselves. All the time we have for this episode of Sportish. I like how how we just get systematically worse as people as the show goes along. Good time to say our names. Our producer's Mike Wallace. He's Dr. Keith Strudler, director of the School of Communication and Media, Montclair State University. I'm Geoff Brault, ftfnext.com for video archives. Check out the podcast version wherever they are served. We'll see you next week. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks for listening to Sportish. See you next time.